You're listening to Driving Performance, your go-to podcast for unmatched expertise in the world of buying and selling an automotive dealership. Each episode features discussions with industry leaders and is brought to you by Performance Brokerage Services, North America's premier, family-owned automotive dealership brokerage firm with over 30 years of experience. We're here to ensure you gain the most reliable insights to confidently navigate a transaction and accomplish your unique goals. Whether you're looking to buy or sell, we prioritize building lasting relationships and maximizing the value beyond the transaction level. Here are your hosts, Jamie Farley and Paul Keckney, for another segment of The Dealer's Journey.
Welcome back to Driving Performance. I'm Jamie Farley with my co-host Paul Keckney, and our guest is someone whose leadership has helped shape one of the most respected dealership groups in the country. Mickey Anderson is the president and CEO of Baxter Auto Group, a family business he's expanded across multiple states through strategic acquisitions and a deep commitment to people and culture. He's also stepped into a national spotlight, advocating for dealers and consumers on Capitol Hill.
Mickey, I think I first met you probably close to 10 years ago. It has been truly a pleasure to watch your business grow and expand, and we're just thrilled to have you here today. So thank you and welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. I've known Jamie for a long time, and Paul, we've known each other for quite a while as well, and it's a pleasure to be here. So thanks for the invitation.
Mickey, it's such an honor to have you, and I just wanted to start off by also mentioning that I had the privilege of working with your dad, Tal Anderson, for a very brief period of time at the beginning of my career. And I could tell even in that short amount of time that I spent with him that he was truly building a legacy with Baxter Auto. So I know we would love to just hear the story of how he got started and then what values or lessons from him still are guiding you today.
My father might be my favorite subject, and he would disagree with you if somebody said he was building a legacy. He loves the car business, loved the car business. And it was such a pleasure for him to be able to grow his business and invite more people into the business, I think is what really gave him the most satisfaction. And that kind of does go back to his start or his origin. Small town, Iowa farm kid, came to Omaha, Nebraska for college. And he had a part-time job at Baxter Plymouth, I believe it was at the time, in 1957. And it started off by doing the things so many of us start off doing, washing cars and acting as a lot porter. But he really fell in love with the business, talked his way onto the sales floor, became a salesperson, and I think was quite good early, so good that he dropped out of college, which he regretted so much. He went back at about the age of 50 and completed his college credits.
Oh, wow.
He dropped out and started working full-time for Mr. Baxter. And, we were so fortunate that Mr. Baxter was really like a father to him and mentored him in his career. And so fast forward to 1983, he retired and he sold the store to my father. Very unusual. We don't see that so much these days, given the valuations, but he financed the purchase so that my father could step in and be the owner. And from there, my father showed, two things. He was a good operator, but highly entrepreneurial and had a desire to grow. And from 1983, he had a chance to acquire a Toyota store. And then that led to in 1991 for us, we were one of the fortunate few that kind of won what will be always, referred to as the Lexus lottery. So we became a Lexus dealer here in our hometown in 1991. And we were all very aware of how that really changed, the course of the trajectory of our group. And so over time, we've just kind of continued to add stores where we felt that they made sense, where we felt that the dealer or the manufacturer was the right partner for us. And when we felt that we had an employee that was ready to make that step. Importantly, maybe one of the legacy pieces, Jamie, from my father was because he appreciated the opportunity to be an owner and participate at that level. All of our general managers, as they get to a certain point in their career, will be offered an opportunity to buy into our stores. And so for us, it's an important value. And it's something that really we're proud to continue to do. and always reflect back on the opportunities that my father was given.
Mhm. Well, that's an incredible opportunity that he had, and then obviously you had succeeding him, and then the leaders in your organization have.
Yeah, truly.
So obviously the business has grown substantially under your leadership the last number of years. I think you're at 20 dealerships right now. You represent 10 manufacturers. I think you've already kind of given us some backstory on what you look for, but is there anything specific that you maybe are trying to achieve, or is there a number or a goal that you're trying to achieve?
You know, because I love to sleep at night, we do not have any burning numbers about where we need to get. Uh, and for us, authentically, um, we really are very laser focused on the 20 stores that we have. And I would tell you every day it's a challenge, and any dealer would tell you this, to make sure that they're operating optimally and really representing the manufacturer with excellence, and taking great care of our guests and our employees. So, I mean, that's kind of what gets us up every morning. However, I will tell you that we have a lot of amazing people. We have about 2,000 employees, and we see people coming that we know are capable of leading a store. So when we see those remarkable people come up, we just feel like it's such an opportunity for us to maybe add one more store, create one more opportunity. And so, we hope that we're able to continue to do that.
Well, you mentioned people, and that is the perfect segue to my next question. And I know from working with a couple of your stores over the years that you are very much a people first company. And then you even just mentioned a few minutes ago about giving the general managers and leaders in your organization the opportunity to have ownership at one point. But can you expand on that a little bit? And can you maybe share some things that you do that are different from other dealerships and organizations?
It's important to me that everyone identifies not really as Baxter, but as um, the store that they're representing. And oftentimes, if a general manager, as they're new into their position, one of the first questions they'll ask is, well, who do I report to? My answer is always the same. You report to the manufacturer. It's such a privilege to be able to represent these manufacturers. And I remind them that there's so many people in other businesses that would love to have these exclusive distribution rights for all of these amazing brands, and have these large markets that, really it's our responsibility to serve. And so kind of that's where it all starts, Jamie, this idea that we have this obligation to our manufacturer partners. That would be kind of at the core of it. And the other piece, and it's not subordinate or secondary to it, but along with that, we recognize that we're only as good as the people who show up every day. And so, we're very intentional in terms of how we select people for their mindsets. We talk about making sure that our employees are curious and they're caring, and they're driven to achieve outcomes, that they're good teammates. They care about the community that they're in. And over the years, we have been able to focus more and more on selecting candidates based on those mindsets, as opposed to having to seek out some of the skill sets that used to drive a lot of our hiring decisions. When we switched to that focus on the mindsets that would be aligned with our mission and our vision and our values, we really started to get much better outcomes. We can teach the skills. We've been doing this for almost 70 years. We could absolutely teach somebody the car business. But what we can't teach them, the most important things, are the things they learned from their parents, the things that they learned along the way in terms of caring about other folks and being a good team member. That's what we're really looking for as we build our teams.
I love your point about the relationship with the OEM. And because, usually that's at the top, the ownership or the operational general manager level. But I loved your point about making sure that message is kind of transcends down to everybody in the dealership.
My father would take any employee at any particular moment, usually some moment where we got misaligned, and he'd put his arm around them and walk them out in front of the store. And typically every store will have, Baxter Honda or Baxter Toyota. And he would point to the fascia and say, the only word on that fascia that has any value is the manufacturer's. We're lucky to have our name up there, but remember, It's all about them. And we still, to this day, there's fewer and fewer people around that worked with my father. But to this day, we still laugh about it. And every once in a while, we'll do that for each other, just to remind each other of what it's really all about.
Mm. I love that.
So with your recent acquisition, Smart Motors, 115-year-old company with a great legacy, there's got to be some cultural challenges and things that come up with taking on a legacy store like that. Can you speak to that, and how do you transition all those folks in that culture to you?
Sure. Yeah, Smart's a great example. And I'll start with this. If you're looking for like just authentically good people, Wisconsin's an excellent place to go. It seems to be the absolute standard in that state, and we just haven't run into anyone that we haven't thought was pretty remarkable. But to your point, Paul, all of the organizations that are in this business will have different cultures, different values. For us, we are very intentional when we come in. We try and communicate very clearly on day one about what matters to us, how we expect them to treat each other, how we expect them to wait on our guests, and then, of course, how we expect them to treat our manufacturer. We have a fairly extensive onboarding that we're able to do. In this store at 250 employees. We do it in small groups and take everybody through a bit of the history of our company and in what we believe and why we believe it's important, and then what would be required of the employees to kind of perform to that standard. I think it's a little bit corny to some degree, but I'll be honest and tell you that we'll bring in lots of assets with our mission and our vision, our values, lots of posters, lots of handouts. We really try and make sure right up front they understand exactly what we stand for and what we would expect. And then we have the behavior in our company. We'll do quarterly check-ins with every single employee, and we call it to GPS check-in, and that stands for Grow, Perform, Succeed. But it's their chance to report to whoever their supervisor would be about what their goals are, maybe what their frustrations are, what we can do as a company to help them achieve their goals, and then give them a little bit of feedback about how we see them performing. It's different than a review. It's really more an opportunity to talk about their personal growth and their personal performance. So those two things, kind of very intentional onboarding and then very consistent follow-up from quarter to quarter to quarter, really helps us. In the course, Paul, of a year, we'll kind of sort through the folks that maybe just aren't a good fit. Maybe they'd be happier somewhere else, and land with the team that's committed to what we believe in.
Staying on the topic of acquisitions, just wanted to maybe get some of your insights on what you look for that's beyond the number. So, like maybe the top 2 or 3 things that you're looking at when you're evaluating an acquisition, that putting the money aside.
Very astute qualification there, Jamie. For me, the first thing that I think about is, am I the best dealer for that manufacturer in that market? I've been doing this long enough. I've had a chance to look at opportunities, nearly across the country. And there are so many markets where I'm just very clear that I'm not going to be the best answer for a store in Atlanta or in Boston or maybe in Las Vegas or California. But where I really can bring value would be maybe more here in the Midwest, where we've built our business and we probably understand culturally things a little bit better. But that's kind of the first filter, Jamie. Where do I feel like I could really bring a lot of value? And, more often than not, my answer is that, I'm not the best answer. Beyond that, we do really look to size increasingly. The only thing, close to as rare or what is equally rare as the opportunity is the right general manager to run that store. At least in our group, general managers really drive the culture and drive the performance. And so our approach is, or our view is, if we have a talented individual who's ready to lead a store, we want to give them the biggest store they can, because the ROI on the individual is maximized in a bigger store. And I don't want to pick on brands, but if I put a brilliant person in a small store, maybe a small market share brand, no matter how good they are, or the economic return on the individual's efforts will be fairly limited. But there are many brands and many markets where if you have a talented person there, the return on their efforts will be really quite high. So those are two things we look at. And maybe the third thing, Jamie, is, we are trying every day to better and better understand the manufacturers that are out there. And we feel that our approach and our values are better aligned with some and maybe less aligned with others. And so we do have a number of brands that we really feel really strong alignment with, and that's where we prefer to grow with those brands.
Makes sense.
And maybe that answers the question I was going to ask, is you divested of some stores recently. Was there anything that you would add to that that kind of made that decision, or was it just purely that it just didn't align with what you're trying to do with your organization?
When you jump into the kind of the COVID era of 21, 22, 23, like so many dealers, we were certainly well positioned. Everyone had plenty of money during that time to grow, but valuations had gotten to be incredibly high, and at that time we had a substantial position for large stores with a brand, and we were watching that brand go through yet another merger, another transition. What we saw was really a domestic car and truck company. There was a subsidiary of an Italian Southern European company. There was a wholly owned entity of another European entity. And it was pretty clear for all of us that were representing that manufacturer at that time that this just was not going to end well, that they were clearly headed for a very, very tough time. The organizational structure was all wrong. Leadership was disconnected. And so with those very clear signals and recognizing it was a seller's market, we really felt that the best thing for us to do, as hard as it was to pull back and to go from 24 stores to 20, we really felt that was the right thing to do. And it, it's paid off. We've been able to go back out and redeploy and pick up other stores along the way. But
your timing was impeccable. It was pretty good.
Paul, it's fun. I've been given that comment a few times, but the story, even a dumb guy from Nebraska could see what was happening. So it was the right timing for us.
Yeah.
Well, switching to a different topic, you have been actively involved in government affairs and recently took legal action last year in 2024 by joining forces with API, which I believe is Automotive Petroleum Institute, and filed a lawsuit regarding the EV mandates. And I know you've spoken out about this a number of times. I personally understand the motivation and the goal, behind this. Maybe could you just touch on this a little bit with an overview, and then provide kind of the latest news or updates on where this stands?
Sure. No, it'd be my pleasure. So again, that was an easy thing to see play out, particularly here in the Midwest. When you took a look at what the EV essentially mandates were indicating, the manufacturers would have to build in terms of pure EVs, and then you understood the customer that was coming in. And I'm very fortunate that in my role, I get to spend a lot of time in our dealerships, and I get to spend a lot of time with customers. There was a massive disconnect between what was being mandated would be built and what customers were really looking to buy. The reality is there's a customer for EVs, and there's a customer for hybrids, and there's a customer for pickup trucks. But whether it's color or configuration, minivans, coupes, convertibles, the history of this industry is really all about manufacturers responding to the tastes, the needs, the demands of customers. And when you disconnect that or so violently interrupt that, it's going to cause huge problems. It would be a problem for certainly our customers, and I saw that clearly. It would be a problem for for the dealerships, without a doubt, but a huge issue for the manufacturers, the industry, and really the country. So that's what got me involved. The lawsuit was an opportunity to join some other organizations. You mentioned API, and there were a number of other ag organizations, which is how it kind of hit my radar. That saw an opportunity to maybe finally get a chance to have our case literally be heard. We had written numerous letters to the president. We had shared all of our concerns. We had done every interview we could possibly do, but there was never a response. And so this legal path was a chance to really get our message out there. Today, the lawsuit is currently on hold, but still filed and active. It would appear that the way this current administration is moving, there may be no need for the lawsuit. It looks to me like the conditions that brought the lawsuit about are likely to dissipate.
Yeah, no, it was only kind of commenting that maybe the current administration will kind of take care of this anyway, like you mentioned, Mickey.
So putting EV vehicles, putting tariffs aside, what do you see is changing in the automotive retail environment? What excites you? Anything concern you? What do you foresee coming?
Honestly, Paul, I will tell you, we'll start with the concerns. I continue to see our government be so overly active, and they have such a profound ability to impact our business and kind of disrupt that consumer-driven model that's been so successful for so long. So while EVs were a huge issue and the government interference there, now we have some other issues, and so generally, it's my hope that maybe when we get through the current season that we're in, we just get back to an economy that's driven largely by kind of capitalism and letting customers drive manufacturers, and we know that's reliable. So that would be maybe my one large concern. But there's a lot that's exciting that's going on. I will tell you that I've watched with great admiration what Carvana has done. We watched CarMax do this for a long time, and I think over time, a lot of us in the industry maybe just kind of wrote them off. But this upfront price, very transparent sales process, with a really excellent digital execution and a great in-facility experience has been successful for decades, really. And then up comes Carvana, and while they've had maybe some of their financial challenges in the background, what can't be missed is the number of customers that are choosing them. Okay. And I think that really, it's aligned, if you think about it, with how much money people spend on Amazon. And consumers are increasingly preferring an experience that if it's not totally digital, it at least starts digitally. And so with that, I continue to be excited that there are more and more tools, better and better vendors in our space that are allowing us to deliver a similar experience to our guests. And I think it's going to be great for dealers all across the country. Add to that, AI can make these tools really excellent for our guests. I think about how busy everybody is. And, if you could sit down at home at 10 o'clock at night and really start to think about the car you want to buy, that's the moment that you want to engage in chat or get a little bit more information as you configure a car and think about pricing, and you're curious about what a lease payment would be. I suspect that these tools will be improved with the addition of AI that will allow customers to maybe just desk their own deal at home on their couch. And we might wake up every morning with, another handful of cars sold through that execution. I feel very excited that that's likely to be in our future.
You make such a good point, Mickey. As a guy that spent almost 30 years in retail, owned a couple of dealerships myself, and now as a consumer, and I go out and I've got to spend 4 or 5 hours in a dealership when I already knew going in what I wanted to buy. It's a very frustrating process. So I think you're spot on.
Yeah. And that's so solvable. And The good news is a lot of the current maybe traditional behaviors that would happen in a dealership enhance profit. I think about the F&I experience and some of the after sales products that we sell. With the addition of more digital opportunities, it occurs to me that we may not get quite the screaming high F&I income per car that we have. That might settle down as customers shop and choose on their own. But the offset's going to be a massive reduction in employee cost.
Mhm.
So I see our margins, if you think about the difference between what we get from the customer and what we spend in expense, I think those margins could actually improve even at maybe a kind of a declining, retail margin.
So circling back again to leadership development, just because I think what you do is so unique and special, I was wondering if you can maybe give us a little bit more insight on how you prepare, someone who has that potential kind of at the start of their career as they work their way up to being a general manager. If you have like a specific anecdote of anyone in your stores who maybe started in as a service advisor or a porter or in sales and are now a general manager.
I'll tell you one of my most recent favorite stories. Um, I'm a cyclist. I see Paul has a bike that I'm very curious about there in his in the background. Um, and for many years, I went to the same bike shop, and I experienced a young man who would always repair my bike. And at the time, he was so happy to be in that bike shop. But then one day, he told me he was getting engaged, and I said, "Okay, well now you're going to need a real job." And so I hired him. And he was a service advisor and then a service manager. And we moved him over to variable ops, and he worked as a salesperson and then a sales director in our organization. And then we had him work with one of our best general managers. And in the span of about 5.5 years, just under 6 years, he went from bike mechanic to general manager. And he now runs one of our largest Toyota stores in Colorado Springs and does a brilliant job. That story, I think, demonstrates what I talked about earlier. He had all the right mindsets. I knew how he would be with customers. I saw his attentiveness. I could tell he was a very bright young person. I knew he had a tremendous work ethic. But then it also demonstrated when you have a clear succession path inside your store and you're able to understand maybe who in your organization has maybe innate ability to be a leader, you can move them through positions much more quickly. And I think it's not to be missed. The fixed operations piece is incredibly important and probably growing in importance. Is the variable side kind of simplifies because of the digital execution. That fixed ops side is incredibly important. So we had a succession plan, and we have several people on these tracks where we're moving them through and watching them closely. And they don't have to be like the best service advisor that we have or the number one salesperson. They just need to show that they understand the process and they have a command of the process. And as long as they continue to demonstrate leadership skills, curiosity and comprehension, we'll continue to move them along until they kind of top out or we get them to a general manager role.
Great points. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So
That's my favorite.
yeah, by the way, that is a fantastic story. I love it. So if you got a lot of runway still in your career, but somewhere down the road, if at the tail end of your career, if you were to look back and be proud of something and your legacy that you left, what do you feel that would look like? What would people say about you? What would that look like?
Oh boy. Well, as a dealer kid, I think the first thing is, well, he didn't screw it up when his dad handed it over to him. So that's always in my mind. I think the expectations are pretty low for us dealer kids. No, you know what? I will tell you that, like my father before me, I am really proud when I go to a manufacturer and they kind of gush about one of our general managers, and I love it. We have general managers on national dealer councils. We have general managers on the local ad associations and in serving on local charity boards here. we have some really amazing people, and nothing makes me happier than when I hear that reported back to me. And what's really important to me, and I do hear this a lot, is that our manufacturer partners recognize that it's not me, it's them. Now, what I'll take credit is we're good at picking them and we're good at developing them. But in the end, when we get a good outcome or a great result, it's because of that general manager in the store.
All right. I mean, I think we're down to our last question. Mickey, I'm just going to end with, what's next for Baxter Auto?
We'll continue to look for opportunities to grow. And my ambition is that we can continue to evolve the sales process and, quite frankly, the service process to where maybe we're better and better recognized as someone who really takes care of the guest in a unique or an uncommon way. We're working on it hard every single day. And I don't think I'm going to be remembered for our size. We have no ambitions to be anywhere near the largest. But over time, I hope that we get our model, Jamie, to the point where we could be looked at as among the best. I have admired the Roger Penske's and the Greg Goodwins at Cooney and Ken Schnitzer at Park Place, and there's like so many amazing people in this business. I hope that one day, maybe we would be recognized as somebody who is doing it really, really well. So a little bit of growth and a lot of improvement.
Excellent. And congratulations to you and your continued success. And thank you so much for being such a strong voice and leader in the automotive industry. I know that we value that tremendously.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And thank you. This is a great opportunity to talk more about we have a great industry, so we need to talk about that a little more.
Absolutely.
Thanks again. It was a real pleasure, Mickey. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mickey.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Driving Performance. The show notes include links to any resources mentioned in today's show. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review. If you're considering buying or selling an automotive dealership, reach out to us at performancebrokerageservices.com or send an email to info@performancebrokerage services.com.